I think leaders should take accountability for their actions and not blame people on their team.
Welcome back to Square Off. Without naming Maricopa County Attorney Allister Adel, you heard Governor Doug Ducey call out his fellow Republican for blaming 3 of her employees for 180 botched criminal cases that had to be dropped. The very next day, the embattled top prosecutor did an about-face and took full accountability. So, what does it all mean? Our panel has the answers. Joining us are Kyrsten Jones, an attorney and a former Republican candidate for governor, and Julie Erfle, a Democratic communications consultant at erfleuncuffed.com. Welcome to you both.
Thanks for having us.
Good morning.
The Allister Adel saga isn't just political. The county attorney has acknowledged she's an alcoholic and is working through that. But 5 of Allister Adel's top deputies have called on her to step down. They say her alcohol abuse has become a distraction. Former county attorney Rick Romley has called on Adel to quit. We now know, thanks to the Arizona Republic's Robert Anglin, that 180 criminal cases had to be dropped. Kyrsten, when your own governor is turning on you, is that a signal to Allister Adel that it's time to step down?
I think so, Graham. I mean, at this point, unfortunately, we're letting people who have been charged with crimes walk free because we're failing to prosecute them. That's probably a pretty good sign that you're done with this position. I want to address briefly your point about addiction, though, because this is a serious issue, and she has acknowledged it. And it probably is time for her to go ahead and make that her full-time effort, as opposed to blaming things on her staff and then having to come back and make apologies. It's time.
And Julie, Allister Adel has said she's not quitting. She's been defiant. My understanding is there's a question of timing, though. If she stays in office 2 more weeks past April 4th, and the county board could appoint someone who would to replace her, who would not have to run in November, and could wait till November of 2024 when Allister Adel's term would expire, if she stepped down. I'm not saying that's happening. How does that play into what's going on right now, do you think?
I'm not sure if that's actually playing in Allister Adel's mind. I think right now she's just trying to hold on to her job. I think it's unfortunate. I think she's realized that the public is not with her right now, and that's why she's saying she's changing her tune and taking responsibility. But I think at the end of the day, I agree with Kyrsten. She needs to step down. She needs to resign. I think the sooner that happens, the better, but I'm not sure that long-term election issues are what she's thinking about right now.
Okay, let's move on to that Republican lawsuit over early voting. Republican election deniers want to do away with early voting, claiming without any evidence that it's rife with fraud and it's unconstitutional. The Arizona Republican Party under Kelly Ward suing to eliminate it on the grounds that it violates the state constitution. 9 out of 10 voters of all stripes cast early ballots in Arizona. Kyrsten, why did Kelly Ward's Republican Party file this lawsuit?
Well, it's probably one of 2 things. One, they want to be in good stead with Trump, who still has an enormous ability to influence what happens in the Republican Party, and also to help raise a lot of money because the fundraising juggernaut that still swirls around his orbit is powerful. But the other thing is to satisfy that fraction of the party who really, truly, genuinely believes that there was fraud in these elections. The problem is people who vote by mail, and it's most people in Arizona now, and it has been for a long time, are going to lose a basic fundamental right, particularly the people who maybe are in the military, serving overseas, or the sorts of things where we have to give them an opportunity to vote by mail. I hope we don't throw that baby out with the bathwater, because that would be a real crying shame. And shame on the Republicans if it's our fault for doing it.
And so far, Republican candidate for governor, Kari Lake, is the only Republican to come out in support of this. Governor Doug Ducey, maybe feeling like a lame duck in a good way, says this is a really bad idea. Julie, is this lawsuit bad news for Republicans in November, having their Democrats being able to point to them and say, hey, look at that, they really did want to take away your vote?
It could be. I mean, certainly this is an opportunity for Democrats to explain what they mean when they say Republicans are working overtime to make it harder for people to vote. This is probably the most outrageous example that they have, and the easiest example for voters to understand of what the Republican Party is up to, and why it's important for voters to get involved, and why it's important for voters to basically to vote for Democrats in this next election, because voting rights are on the line right now. And maybe they're not going to take away your right, but they're going to make it much more difficult for you to vote. And that's important to understand.
Let's turn now to a new book by two New York Times reporters on the Biden White House. Very interesting to me. It's being promoted with several Kyrsten Sinema anecdotes. And one of them has her praising far-right Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs. She says, "I love Andy Biggs," said this to a group of Republican donors or politicians, I think. "I love Andy Biggs. I know some people think he's crazy, but that's just because they don't know him." Julie, Kyrsten Sinema has praised Andy Biggs in the past. We've heard it. Should she rethink that given his vote to throw out the 2020 Arizona election results?
Yeah, this is really part of Kyrsten Sinema's brand of she's bipartisan and she can be friends with anybody. I would say perhaps, though, maybe she should be a little bit more discerning in her friendships and maybe not promote this "I love you" BFF friendship with somebody who has been implicated in helping plan the January 6th violent insurrection, which tried to undermine democracy, and let's keep in mind also resulted in the injuries of more than 140 police officers. So I think Kyrsten Sinema thinks that this is good for her brand. I would say it's an example of her showing very poor judgment about who she chooses to be buddy-buddy with.
Christine, one analyst is quoted as basically blowing this off, saying, "Oh, just one more thing for Democrats to get angry about." Is that all it is?
I actually have to agree with Julie mostly on this. Kyrsten Sinema is really mostly about Kyrsten Sinema. She's very astute and she's good politically. And if she thinks being friends with somebody is going to help her in the future to be reelected or raise money, she's going to do that. In this case, it probably helps because she needs crossover votes in Arizona to be elected. And certainly Biggs has shown himself capable of being elected. They were friends when they were both in the state legislature together. So I guess it probably just is one more thing in the Sinema book of helping Sinema be more cinematic. Ooh, I might have just made a word there. And it's so not surprising and it's so distasteful. Of all of the Republicans that she could be friends with, she had to pick him. It just, come on, Kyrsten, help us out here. Help the Republicans like you better. Pick a good Republican to be friends with.
I want to go now to the case of Brittney Griner. The Phoenix Mercury star and one of the greatest women's basketball players ever has been under arrest in Russia for the past month. At last word, she faces at least 2 more months in detention on alleged drug charges. All this against the backdrop of America's face-off with Vladimir Putin over Ukraine. Julie, why isn't Brittney Griner's case getting more attention?
Well, I'm not sure. I think here in Arizona, it's probably getting more attention than it is nationally, simply because we know Brittney Griner. She's one of our own. It sounds like perhaps this is just very difficult negotiation that the U.S. is having with Russia. From what I understand, Russia is violating international law and not allowing the U.S. to have contact with Brittney Griner. I just think this is an incredibly sad situation. Our hearts go out to Brittney Griner and especially to her family. I can't imagine what they're going through. I just think, here in Arizona, we just need to keep talking about Brittney Griner, continuing to say her name, and continuing to remember that she is being held prisoner over there, and we don't know why or when she may be allowed to get out.
Christine, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the law enforcement and sort of law and order part of me says if you break the law, there's a consequence. But absolutely agree with Julie that it is unacceptable that international laws and norms and mores are being breached here. Obviously, our hearts go out to all of the people of Ukraine and all of the people that are innocent in Russia of what's going on there. Can't we just say she had a minor infraction, bring her back here, we're happy to punish her here, and not make her a pawn, some sort of celebrity, chess piece in this game between Putin and Zelensky and the whole Eastern European fight that's going on? It's really a shame. if that crime had been committed here, it would have been one of the 180 that Allister Adel dropped, and she would have been walking free by now. So I agree with Julie. Let's keep her in mind. Our thoughts and prayers go out to her family, and hopefully the international community will put pressure to make that situation right.
And to be clear, these are so far just allegations by Russian authorities, and we don't know what evidence there is
Right.
yet. Got to end it there. Julie Erfle and Christine Jones, thanks very much for joining us.